Please come on in, find your seats. Welcome to the National FFA Finals Hall. I'm your host, Sheridan Johnson from Conrad, Montana. FFA continually strives to stimulate an interest in leadership and citizenship within members. Our second event this morning, the Prepared Public Speaking event, is specifically designed to develop agricultural leadership in FFA members by providing the opportunity for participation in public speaking activities. These students have selected a topic of their choice and crafted a speech from a series of key messages that communicates their points quickly and effectively. The Prepared Public Speaking Leadership Development event is sponsored by Bayer. The four national finalists will deliver their 6 to 8 minute speeches before the judges. They will be scored on components of their delivery and on their answers to topic-related questions in the 5 minutes after their speech. To select the ranking among our finalists is no small task. We are fortunate to have some incredibly qualified and knowledgeable judges with us to make the decision. Judges, will you please stand as your name is called? First, we have Corey Rosenbush, the President and CEO of Global Chain Alliance. Next up, Michelle Payne, certified speaking professional and author. We have with us Cody Feetsum, the North American Customer Experience Manager for, I can't remember, Bayer, yes. That's the part I didn't write down. Next is Mark Sunborn, the president of Sunborn and Associates Incorporated, an idea studio for leadership development. We also have with us Dustin DeVries, the talent acquisition lead for Zoetis. And last but certainly not least, Elin Miller, a hazelnut and wine grape farmer and the chair of the Cultivating New Frontiers in Agriculture. A part of each of our speakers' score depends on their ability to remain within the time constraints of the Prepared Public Speaking Guidelines. This makes our timers a crucial component of this event. Today, our timekeepers are Catlin Wolf and Deborah Rudd. To keep our event running smoothly and to provide a fair environment for all of participants, please observe a few simple rules. Please now take a moment to silence or turn off all electronic devices, especially cell phones, so our speakers aren't interrupted. Once Courtesy Corps closes the doors, please remain quiet and stay seated. If you must step out, please wait to do so between participants. Thanks for your cooperation. With the Courtesy Corps, please secure all of the doors and hallways. Great. Are the judges ready? Cool. Our first speaker today is Jonah Simmons of the Cheyenne Frontier FFA chapter in the state of Wyoming.
When I was in kindergarten, I spent the entire week in anticipation of Friday afternoons. Sure, Taco Tuesday and Sleep-In Saturday were great, but Fridays offered the opportunity to play games that only came on that beloved day. My favorite game was the game of telephone, where my classmates and I would sit in a circle, whisper a message into the ear of the person next to us, and pass it on. My favorite phrase was Henry Potter won on a hunch, which would almost magically turn into Mrs. Neville's underwear, or in a bunch. And while this was just a fun elementary game, the agriculture industry is facing the same misinterpretation of messages with drastically different outcomes. Producers are conveying messages to consumers, and much like in our game of telephone, these messages are continuously getting altered, so consumers are getting fed false information. To end this catastrophe, let's play our own game of telephone. to help everyone anticipate Fun Fridays as much as I did. Growing up, the game of telephone never had official rules, but we would always respect people by giving them their basic rights. Unfortunately, the game that our industry is playing uses no rules, allowing fake news to thrive. Fake news is a topic that has become more prevalent given the political turmoil regarding the 2016 presidential election, but has only grown in popularity to the point where our own president is wrong in his use of the term. He is right on one thing, though. We need to tackle the bully of fake news to truly make America great again. A recent Pew Research Center report shares that Americans rate fake news as a higher problem than racism, climate change, or terrorism. We live in a frightening, appalling world with more atrocities than ever before. If we want to address the issues that divide this nation, we first must put an end to fake news. It's no new topic to our industry, with perhaps the most well-known example being Oprah Winfrey's 1996 campaign that mad cow disease was rampant in United States herds. She exclaimed that the discovery stopped her cold from eating another hamburger, encouraging others to follow in her footsteps and negatively impacting our industry across the board. Now, when I was in kindergarten, monotonous Mondays were my least favorite. You see, we had to engage in the anti-bullying program, which made absolutely no difference on the kids who would try to ruin Fun Friday for everyone. So if we want to bring back our fun afternoons of telephone games, we must be able to stop the bullies that attempt to end our game. Right here, in the incredible state of Indiana, we see a very recent example of how these bullies were able to degrade the reputation of the agriculture industry. Members of the Animal Recovery Mission, known as ARM, went undercover into one of the nation's largest dairies, Fair Oaks Farms. Over the span of 3 months, they caught video footage of extreme animal abuse. And upon watching the video myself, I too was quite disturbed at the inhumane treatment of these cattle. They were kicked and beaten to death as if they had no worth. But this abuse sparked an even larger problem. The media wasn't broadcasting what was being done to handle the situation, plummeting society's view of our industry. In a statement released days after the video, owner of the farm, Mike McCloskey, responded saying that the employees featured in the video exercised a complete and total disregard for the documented training that all employees go through to ensure the comfort, safety, and well-being of our animals. The media placed ARM on a pedestal for the result to be mere hypocrisy. Had these individuals reported the abuse immediately, their mission to recover abused animals could have been accomplished. All they succeeded at was prolonged abuse. What the media doesn't tell us is that 4 of the 5 employees featured in the video had already been dealt with and no longer had ties to the farm. But the response was Fairlife products being removed from shelves nationwide. Journalist Caitlin O'Kane writes in a June 2019 article that grocery chain Jewel Osco removed all Fairlife products as a result of the video. If we as agriculturists care about keeping our industry true to its foundation, we must find a way to stop the spread of fake news. Once other grocery chains remove Fairlife products, they control all consumer opinions. We must stop this bully once and for all to ensure that the consumers on the other end of the line have the ability to make their own informed decisions. While the anti-bullying program didn't seem to help me much in elementary school, let's look at a few steps we can take to make our industry fun again, where we can finally understand news. The first step in our anti-bullying program is to get involved. When we are the consumers, we need to question the reliability of our information and look into multiple different sources. On the flip side, when we are trying to convey a message, we need to follow the advice of a 2011 article by Harvard Business Review. Keep the message simple. If we as agriculturists were to begin to keep our messages simple, they would be less likely to get tangled up. we could finally play our game without our messages getting misconstrued. The second step in our anti-bullying program is to find opportunities. In 1996, Oprah Winfrey was led to the courtroom for her negative remarks against the agriculture industry. But she won the case unanimously. Despite the trial initially having a negative effect on our industry, it brought many issues to light. Members of society began to see how important it was to do their own research. We may have lost that battle, but we won the war. The trial became a very effective opportunity for our industry to correctly inform consumers. And to ensure this continues to happen, we need to step up and advocate. Our generation is one that is addicted to technology and social media. So for once, let's use that to our advantage. Post information about the spread of fake news and share only accurate information. Utilize your First Amendment right to share with others what the agriculture industry truly stands for. When we use these two simple steps of our anti-bullying program, we will be able to have fun by finally understanding news. Now, as we leave here today, I hope that we can all agree on at least two things: that the agriculture industry is imperative, and that high school teachers need to implement Fun Fridays, because frankly, I need them more now than I did in kindergarten. And while it may not be as amusing as Mrs. Neville's underwear, I think I have a new favorite phrase for my future telephone games. Let's educate and advocate for agriculture. With that being said, what will your message be? Thank you.
Daniel Moynihan once said, everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but not their own facts. People who have strong opinions often are very invested because of how they feel, their emotions. What's the best way to respond to someone who is emotionally sincere but inaccurate in what they're spreading?
There's a lot of ways that we can handle that situation. I think that's a very great point. We look at fake news and see how difficult it is to define it in and of itself because of that exact fact. We as humans are so prone to be looking for our own opinions as facts. But what we need to realize is that we need to step out of that comfort zone. We need to find more unique ways in order to spread our message. There are people who disagree with our opinion, but they need to see the facts. Those of us in the blue jackets have the opportunity to leave here today and share those facts by posting on social media and utilizing advocacy within your own high school.
Well, congratulations on being here. Could you perhaps share some very specific ideas that you feel FFA members have a responsibility to help people outside of agriculture understand the fake news about food and farming today?
I think there are a lot of ways that we can truly deal with this. If we piggyback off of that last question, I think we can really be getting involved in our communities. I think going to school board meetings would be a great way for us to advocate for agriculture. There are many people there who disagree with the facts that we have to present. That's an opportunity to do that. Within FFA, participate in CDEs and LDEs. For instance, the Ag Issues Forum offers the opportunity to advocate to the public through presentations about what agriculture truly stands for.
Hi, Jonah. What formal training should agriculturists have if they intend to proactively leverage social media to address inaccurate news?
I personally don't think we need any formal training. I think it's all in our heads that we can walk out and advocate for this industry. If we're truly passionate enough about it, we can go out and pursue that on our own. But if we want to see formal training, I think there's a lot of things we can do. There are organizations such as the Google News Initiative, which is going out of their way to educate the public about the role of fake news in the media. And I think it'd be great if we had the opportunity to discuss with some of those members and learn some of their personal ways they see about handling fake news within any industry, and we can utilize that within our own.
Good morning. You mentioned that producers are constantly trying to convey the message. What role do you think that the industry, whether it be trade associations and or the industry companies, what role do you think they play in advocacy?
I think they probably actually play one of the most crucial roles. I think when we see the spread of fake news within agriculture, it comes down to some of those organizations. And what we need to see is things such as food labeling. We really need to be able to increase the way that we are communicating these messages. Such a small thing as a label on a package of meat carries so much substance for the way people view our industry. So I think we just really need to be looking at some of those minute little details that kind of slip through and see how those organizations and industries are able to help the agriculture industry pursue ending fake news within the industry.
As a lobbyist in Washington, D.C., I find our policymakers are constantly bombarded with messages from extreme viewpoints. Where and how would you advise your peers to get balanced news?
I think balanced news comes from the same places we get news now, the basic media. But there are a couple of precautions we need to take. Seeing articles about something one time doesn't necessarily mean it's true. I offer the advice that we find multiple articles to back up our research. We go back to the Washington Post, democracy dies in darkness. I think this is a very important idea when looking at the glass walls transparency that agriculture tries to sell to the public. We need to allow people to look in, and much in the same way, some of those news organizations are allowing us in the industry and other members of society to look into their organizations as well. So I'd say just doing the same thing we've always done, but just being more careful about how we pursue that.
Jonah, could you provide another example of where fake news has been very evident in agriculture in recent times?
There has been a lot of things. There's really tiny examples, such as the idea that eggs are as bad as your health for cigarettes. This was a news article run in the Atlantic. But we also see another recent example similar to the Oprah situation on the Ellen Show. And we see a similar situation in which she said hashtag eat less meat. And what we need to understand is that took a very negative role in the way our industry was perceived. And again, I need to clarify that we really need to be stepping up. We had an individual in our society that stepped up with the hashtag eat more meat. And she went out there and was able to contradict what Ellen was saying to stand up for our industry. Again, the industry took a hit because of that, but we were able to turn it into a positive and educate the public on what was truly happening.
Jonah, we all want to be intellectually honest, and yet we have to acknowledge that we all have a bias. For instance, an agriculturalist is biased towards ag.
Thank you all for your time. I appreciate it.
We'll give our judges a minute to jot down their thoughts before moving on. If you need to make your exit, please make it now before our next speaker. And if you are just now joining us, please take a moment to silence your electronic devices, as we want to make sure that we provide a fair environment for each of our speakers and nobody is interrupted by a notification. Those of you looking for seats, you're welcome to sit above the red line over here in this section. Courtesy Corps, please secure all doors and hallways. Are the judges ready? Our second speaker today is Kylie Whitworth of the Madison County FFA chapter in the state of Georgia.
We no longer live in a society disconnected from the outside world. In fact, now more than ever, we depend on other nations to provide commodities and to purchase commodities made in the United States. International trade and export markets are important to not only America's economy, but also to the American farmer. However, with some agricultural products suffering declining markets on the world trade front, the need to expand export markets has never been greater. Our farmers depend on both domestic and foreign markets for their goods. And if the American farmers suffer, the world they feed will feel it too. Agriculture is the world's most important industry. With only 2% of Americans engaged in agricultural practices, the United States remains the world's largest agricultural exporter and produces more food than the entire European Union combined. Research also shows that exports are responsible for 20% of the U.S. net farm income, with the total net farm income estimated to reach $65.7 billion by the end of the year of 2018, which is 13% lower than the previous year of 2017. So the question that is begging to be asked is what changed in just a year? The U.S. agricultural commodities hit hardest by recent drop in markets are corn, wheat, and soybeans. Researchers estimate that corn, wheat, and soybean farmers lost $13 billion in the year of 2018 alone as a result of tariffs. In the last few years, the U.S. has seen an increase in the production of corn and soybeans, creating a surplus. This increase, combined with a surplus in dropping foreign markets due to tariffs, created an 8% drop in soybean prices. With domestic markets flooded, exporting crops to these countries became more important and even more difficult. While tariffs have recently received more attention in the news, they have long been a part of our nation's economy. The current tariff situation began in January 2018 as the U.S. placed tariffs on Chinese solar panels and washing machines, followed by tariffs on all imported steel and aluminum. By August 2018, the U.S. had entered into a trade war with China, Canada, Mexico, and the European Union, all of which are the United States' top exporting markets, creating a problem for America's farmers. In retaliation, these foreign markets placed tariffs on commodities coming from the U.S. In August 2018, China placed a 25% tariff on soybeans, causing Chinese importers to cancel contracts with American farmers and buy more from Brazil. These canceled contracts led to a 94% decrease from the previous year's numbers on soybeans exported to China. In late 2018, the U.S. government provided $13.6 billion to subsidize the income of farmers hit by imposed tariffs. However, with no end to the U.S.-China trade war in sight, the U.S. government approved an additional $16 billion relief package in May 2019. Amid declining prices, the standoff between the United States and China is still facing the same stalemate it was a year ago, leaving farmers trapped in the middle. While a 90-day hold on all tariffs between the United States and China ended on March 1st, 2019, much uncertainty remains about the future of agricultural trade between the two countries. In June 2019, China pledged to purchase a significant amount of agricultural goods. However, as of August 2019, no such purchase had been made, and President Donald Trump announced that he would be increasing the current tariffs placed on Chinese goods from 25% to 35%. As a result, China suspended all agricultural trade with the United States and is focusing heavily on South America to make up the deficit this loss creates in crops, such as soybeans and other agricultural goods. According to the New York Times, many farmers worry that as this standoff with China continues, that other soybean producers like Brazil and Argentina could permanently displace American suppliers. With no end to the United States-China trade war in sight and farmers unable to suffer the consequences much longer, how do we create a long-term solution? From an agricultural standpoint, there are two long-term solutions to minimize loss of production and income on farms that present themselves as most viable. One long-term solution with many challenges could be agriculturalists diversifying their crop production and entering domestic markets for commodities traditionally imported from other countries at a lower cost. The United States is currently on the trend of purchasing American-made products. What if this trend extended into the realm of agricultural commodities. While this solution sounds reliable, there are several issues that raise a question of whether or not entering more domestic markets creates a sustainable solution for farmers' income. With higher labor costs and stronger environmental regulations, farmers will be facing an uphill battle to produce a product with competitive prices. In a 2018 letter to a United States senator addressing the proposed changes to the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement, Georgia's Commissioner of Agriculture, Gary Black, wrote, "Labor standards and even emissions from tractor exhaust favor Mexican production. Not only are regulations and labor costs stacked against the farmer, but also the farmer's own efficiency in producing a product may become an issue. While an excess in production may sound like a good problem to have, without other exporting options, farmers may be left with a surplus crop they cannot sell." With the American farmer's efficiency in mind, foreign markets will always be necessary to handle the overflow of a crop produced, making the second long-term solution, opening and expanding foreign markets in low-import countries, the most viable and pragmatic resolution. According to the United States Department of Agriculture, 95% of the world's consumers live outside of the United States. By shifting America's focus on high-value products such as dairy production, meats, fruits, and vegetables, to bulk commodities such as wheat, rice, coarse grains, oilseeds, cotton, and tobacco, farmers may be able to enter existing markets with commodities already being produced in excess in the U.S. In 2017, 33.2% of all U.S. agricultural exports went to East Asia, while only 1.4% went to sub-Saharan Africa and 2.73% went to Central America. Extending commodities to these countries not only benefits the people in a developing country facing food insecurity, but also the American farmer in creating a stable export market. The U.S. could also explore initiating trade with other countries such as Vietnam and the Philippines, opening yet another door for our farmers to reach the world's consumers. Expanding trade with current trade partners and finding other trade outlets creates a safety net for both tariffs and a surplus good. Agriculturalists depend upon trade with other countries, and the heartbeat of the United States economy depends upon agriculture. It only makes sense to protect the interests of agriculturalists by providing them with the necessary foreign markets needed for the production of their business. In times where free trade is threatened and there are no other marketing options, farmers may find themselves struggling to survive, and the rest of the world may share in that struggle. Thank you.
Congratulations, Kylie, on being here. Can you tell me how has the loss of exports and the various trade barriers impacted the mental health of farmers in the U.S.?
I believe that it's impacted farmers all throughout the U.S. mentally just because they are not only getting hit by economically, but also they're getting hit within their own families because they can't support them. With that, I know that suicide percentages have went up within the United States and surrounding countries for farmers, and I believe that as this continues, we need to work to have a positive outlook in advocating for those farmers and talking with them on how we can try to recreate and solve the tariff trade deal that we are currently dealing with.
Hi, Kylie. What resources are available to farmers who may want to explore diversifying their operation and then potentially enter into new and emerging markets, both domestically and abroad?
I believe our number one tool would be the universities within our states. Universities do a great job of researching what we could do within our own state and produce and try and broaden what we export to other countries. For example, in Florida, they wanted to start producing pomegranates. They went to the University of Florida and they proposed this idea. Now the University of Florida has created a pomegranate association, and now they are working and producing pomegranates for all throughout the United States. Going to those universities, talking with those electives, and being able to work with what we can grow within our own states or within the United States that we don't already produce or export greatly would be a great idea for us to work for.
Can you give another example of some other opportunities, like you mentioned, for the crop production and entering in these domestic markets that may replace some of our key export markets?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Can you give an example? Let me rephrase it. Can you give an example? You just mentioned the pomegranate market in Florida. Of another example of diversifying your crop production and replacing to more of a domestic market.
Yes, ma'am. One example that comes to mind is I think of avocados. The United States imports so much of fresh fruits and vegetables from other countries such as Mexico, Chile, Canada. Something that we could work within, California or some of those states that have the correct weather are avocados and blueberries, because I feel like within that we could use that to export, and then we would also have the human consumption within the United States for those as well.
Kylie, thanks for your insights into U.S. trade policy. Policy development, unfortunately, is not void of politics. How do you see politics shaping our policy, and what will the shifting political landscape mean for the future of our trade policy?
I feel like within these trade policies, it is very easy for us to get caught up in the politics and how it surrounds with what side you believe in or want to choose with. The current administration is working within these trade tariffs to try and positively impact our farmers rather than hurt them in a negative sense. So I do feel like, depending upon the political party, it could shape our trade policies, because I do know that those who were opposed to the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement that was signed in 2018 were working towards free trade. They wanted free trade. However, with free trade, we don't have regulations within our government. If we were to have tariffs put on us, we wouldn't have a way for our government to go back and put tariffs on them. So I feel like that's just one way that politics could shape our policy depending upon which party you were to choose.
Kylie, as a hazelnut grower, our farm has been impacted by the Chinese tariffs, and I was really interested with when you cited that 33% of trade is in East Asia, but then just a mere 1.4% is in sub-Saharan Africa. If we look at those developing nations, what do you think are the barriers for us to be able to look at trade in some of those developing countries?
Yes, ma'am. One example that comes to my mind when I think of trade barriers with other developing countries are some countries don't want to take genetically modified organism crops. So with GMO crops, that would be a trade barrier that we would have. For example, European Union does not take any of our commodities that are GMOs. So with that, I know that would be a trade barrier, and it would take research with those developing countries and working with them on what we could or could not trade. When you use the example of hazelnuts, I know that is a specialty crop within the United States, and that it would take research if we ever wanted to do those commodities within other countries.
One of your solutions, and I think it's a good one, is to open or develop low import markets. My question is, why do you think that hasn't been done before?
Yes, sir. I can understand your question as to why it hasn't been done before. I feel like there are some trade barriers with some of those developing countries, and maybe some of those developing countries can't afford to trade at the amount that we would like to. I used Vietnam and the Philippines as an example in my speech, and with that, I did research that we have exported $4 billion worth of agricultural commodities to Vietnam. Thank you.
Hello all, you're learning the drill here. So yes, if you need to take your leave for whatever event, please do so now and not in the middle of a speaker. We'll wait for these folks to get in before I make a phone announcement when other people are coming in, and give our judges some time to deliberate. If you are just now joining us, please make sure to silence your cell phone and any other electronic devices so we don't have any notifications interrupting our speakers. We want to ensure that each of our speakers is provided a similar and fair environment. Thanks for your cooperation. Courtesy Corps, please secure all doors and hallways. our judges ready? Wonderful. Our third speaker today is Casey Williams of the Greenbrier FFA chapter in the state of Arkansas.
There has got to be a better way. Faulkner County farmer Kenny Simon said in a 2018 interview with Front Porch Magazine. His statement resonates with agricultural producers of every commodity when meeting their daily demands. As agriculturalists, we are constantly seeking enhancements and accelerations in our production practices, and more importantly, our profits. Specifically, Mr. Simon was making reference to marketing the beef cattle produced on his family farm. This thought manifested after they had sold several head of calves through the local livestock market in the wake of the 2012 drought that desecrated Arkansas pasturelands. They were simply out of options and at the mercy of the current market, and they left the sale barn feeling shorted, as many other producers did that year. However, necessity often cultivates creativity. The following year, Mr. Simon was able to build a plan that was sure to make his market more consistent, his product more valuable, and his family income more secure. Hello, my name is Casey Williams, and I'm proudly representing the state of Arkansas in this prepared public speaking event. Today, I would like to share with you the advantages of family farmers marketing their beef directly to the consumer and how it can benefit both entities. 727,906. That's right. There are 727,906 beef producers in the United States. These farms add up to a total of 31.7 million head of cattle. At the moment, the majority of these farms are devoted to traditional marketing, but the marketing idea from ranch to restaurant is on the rise, so much so that it seems to be taking flight. Ranch to restaurant is a different way for producers to sell their products. More and more ranchers are committing their farms to serving their own local communities. This movement is compelling ranchers to sell directly to local restaurants and retailers. This benefits not only the rancher by providing a steady market, but also the restaurants, as they have a steady, tangible, and sustainable flow of local healthy food. Naturally, as customary with any change, there are setbacks ranchers must endure when changing their market, but the reward here significantly outweighs the risk. There are those, however, who would argue that the risk would subdue the reward, or that this is simply a fad that will pass, as many others have. They might say that most do not make a large profit, or that we could potentially be substituting value instead of adding it. They might also say that they increase the liability when direct marketing. Even though some producers share this perspective, these arguments are not always applicable. Many ranchers have been using ranch-to-restaurant marketing for generations. Most ranchers that practice it are careful to avoid substituting value. Instead, they are simply utilizing an optional route to promote and sell their unique brand of goods. As far as increased liability is concerned, there's a degree of liability involved for all producers, regardless of what they produce or how they market it. Although minimizing it is necessary in all endeavors, some liability simply comes with the territory. Not to mention, many of these producers consume their own beef and are prepared and equipped to defend it against any food safety claims. It is important for ranchers to find a way to market their product or to find their niche. In other words, there are multiple niche markets to fall into, and Jan Holder, in her book, How to Direct Market Your Beef, lists many different marketing techniques producers can attempt. Some popular examples from her book are organic, grass-fed, Angus, lean, and from a family farm. Mrs. Holder and her family decided to sell straight from the pasture to the plate, removing the middleman and associated commissions. The operation Jan and her family are running is on the small side, and being small, she's able to literally monitor every carcass that they sell. Families like that aspect of small businesses. The reassurance of quality meat is what drives consumers to buy directly from producers. This enables them to differentiate their products from others, and they now sell throughout 11 Western states. Doug Katz, a chef in Cleveland, Ohio, is a strong supporter of buying locally. He buys directly from a local ranch that sells grass-fed beef. He uses this opportunity to educate his customers in his restaurant. The honest relationship between producer, chef, and consumer is an ideal situation for all ranchers who decide to take the step to sell directly. The Small Farm Program at the University of California says, "One of the most enjoyable aspects of selling directly to restaurants is the ongoing dialogue with these food professionals. Feedback from chefs allow you to upgrade your product and services. Communication between business partners is a necessity and makes the job easier." Steve Sands from Performance Food Group says, "We cannot keep our customers happy if the cattlemen are not providing us with a quality product and the eating experience that our customers desire. So we truly are in the same boat. The buyer and seller have a common goal in mind, to service the consumers. Many restaurants want to jump on the bandwagon of buying directly from ranches. These restaurants may have features of natural foods, regional specialties, or unique cuisines. Each person in the U.S. eats, on average, 55.7 pounds of beef each year. According to Selling More Beef in Restaurants, beef is the commodity that drives the decision-making process for restaurant owners. The food distribution company, Performance Food Group, will buy and sell more than 1.5 million pounds of beef and poultry annually. Producers have to get creative when selling to restaurants. Producers face the problem of high-end cuts being easy to sell and low-end cuts being harder to sell. Jan Holder said, "Restaurants love buying steaks from local ranchers, but steaks only make up about 10% of the carcass." She goes on to say that by adding value to the cuts of meat, such as making a round roast into jerky, the producer becomes more profitable through their versatility. The new trend from ranch to restaurant is quickly germinating among the landscape of beef producers in the United States. Not only does it benefit the producer, but everyone involved. The producer is able to eliminate the middleman and related commissions, while restaurant owners are able to buy quality meat that is produced locally. Like many family farmers, Mr. Simon has developed a working relationship with local restaurants. The Root Cafe in Little Rock now purchases 150 pounds of beef each week from Simon Family Farm. Mr. Simon's story is one of success and overcoming barriers. He has found a way to excel, and other producers should model his determination. As agriculturalists, there will always be a better way. Like Mr. Simon, it is our job to seek it. Thank you.
Casey, you talked about adding value and substituting value. Would you please clarify that for me and give an example that will help me understand?
So whenever you are talking about adding value and substituting value, a lot of these traditional farmers might believe that whenever you are producing your animals to finishing weight, you're just substituting that value instead of adding it at the very end. But in reality, these producers and these ranchers are adding value the entire time. Mr. Simon, he has developed a very rigorous feeding schedule that he feeds all of his cattle there. He raises sorghum Sudan, and throughout the summer months, his cattle are able to use that to add preconditioning to their body. So by adding value the entire time, they're not just substituting it, they're adding it through the entire process.
Congratulations on making it. I wondered if perhaps you could tell me 71% of consumers make their buying decisions on labels, studies show. And so my question is, do the marketing labels that you mentioned, such as organic, grass-fed, farm-raised, build or undermine trust in farmers and ranchers?
Would you repeat your question one more time?
Yes. Do marketing labels, such as organic, farm-raised, grass-fed, and such, build or undermine trust in farmers and ranchers?
I believe that you can look at it both ways, honestly. For the producers, it could potentially build their trust if they're actually following their label the whole time. So for example, organic farmers, if they're actually following organic protocol, then yes, it does build their trust. It might undermine it if other consumers might find out that they're not using organic products on their things and it's still labeled as such. But in most cases, the USDA inspects it and makes sure that all of these products are labeled correctly and that these producers can be able to build their trust.
Hi. You mentioned the potential liability for producers in a ranch-to-restaurant model. How would you suggest smaller producers prepare themselves to potentially defend against alleged food safety issues, concerns?
So I'll use the example of Mr. Simon for this question. Mr. Simon takes all of his products directly to the Cypress Valley processing plant, and I was able to talk to the owner of that place, Andy Shaw, and he gave me the rundown of everything that happens there. The USDA inspectors come, they look at all of their catalogs, they check everything in their technology to make everything is up to date. They make sure all of their facilities are clean and everything is working perfectly for the producers, and so that we'll be able to go to the consumers correctly. So in this case, by making sure it's all inspected, these producers are able to keep those labels, like you mentioned, as family farmed or clean meat in this case, such as the USDA inspectors.
What are some of the ways that local producers can promote and tell their stories and get their message out?
The biggest way for producers to do this is definitely social media. There's a farm down the road from me called Burroughs Family Farm, and they raise Charolais cattle, and they sell the majority of their products through Facebook. A lot of producers are able to use Facebook to direct their market to the consumer. Mr. Simon does this, and the Root Cafe was able to find out about them through Facebook and social media. They found out about them, they were able to talk about it and see what kind of products they have, and the Root Cafe owner was able to go out to Mr. Simon's farm and check out everything and really build that relationship like I talked about in my speech. So they're really close, and this was all brought together by social media.
Casey, you referenced Performance Food Group, one of the nation's largest food service distributors. How do you distinguish the difference between direct-to-resteurant versus a nationwide middleman that's sourcing locally? And are both of those part of the better way?
Whenever you are selling directly to the restaurant, to the consumer, this would be this niche market that I'm focusing on, as this niche market is directly about the community. So if there's a need in your community, this is a perfect niche market for your rancher to go about to explore the best options for him. In the case of selling the middleman that we talked about, going directly to like a sale barn and then going from there, that would be your middleman. And in this case, it's not directly this niche market, as the producers are not selling directly to the restaurants or directly to the consumers.
You mentioned the labeling and being able to look at differentiation of product. When we're talking grass-fed beef, and maybe because I'm more in the horticulture area, is there a strict definition on grass-fed? Is there consistency? And what really are the attributes that make that compelling?
So for grass-fed beef, it is your animal is raised between around 2 years to 3 years, finishing them on grass-fed beef. Mr. Simon actually does raise grass-fed beef, and at the very end he does corn finishing, and that the Root Cafe is definitely okay with that, and they prefer it, and they label it as grass-fed beef. So for the majority of the time, they are raising their animals. Thank you.
Again, as you're making your exit, be sure to take all of your belongings. This is the time to leave in between speakers. We've got one more on the lineup. For those of you just entering, please ensure that you turn off your cell phone and other electronic devices, because we don't want any notifications or distractions for our audience while our speakers are presenting, so we can ensure a fair environment for each of our speakers. Right after the speaker finishes up, be sure to stay for some quick announcements, and then we're good to go. Courtesy Corps, will you please secure all doors and hallways? Are our judges ready? Our fourth speaker today is Marla Mending of the Triton FFA chapter in the state of Minnesota.
It's high noon, and the sun is beating down on the crowd that has gathered to witness which gunfighter will successfully make the first move. They stand at opposite ends of the street, their hands hover over their holsters. Long seconds pass. Wait, is this showdown necessary? Yes, there's a new kid in town, and it's creating questions and uncertainty over the meat consumers choose to put on their plates. Perhaps an introduction would be helpful. This new kid goes by a lot of names: cultured meat, lab-grown meat, clean meat, plant-based meat, and some even call it fake meat. Others would rather it not be called meat at all. Whatever the name, there's no doubt these meat alternatives are finding their way onto a menu near you. Let's explore a few key questions. First, what are these meat alternatives? What are the perceived benefits and concerns? Will consumers buy them? And finally, what does this growing trend mean to the conventional meat and livestock industry? Let's start with lab-grown meat. The first successful lab-grown meat was presented in the form of a 5-ounce hamburger patty by Dr. Mark Post and his research team in the Netherlands in 2013. To create the burger, researchers harvested stem cells directly from a live animal and placed the cells in a petri dish with amino acids and carbohydrates. There, the muscle cells grow and multiply, resulting in a fiber that mirrors ground meat. Lab-grown meat is not available on the market yet, but here's what is, and it's a serious contender in this protein showdown. Plant-based meat alternatives, which can be made from soy, peas, beans, rice, wheat, or potatoes, strive to replicate the taste, texture, and appearance of real meat. There are two primary plant-based alternatives that are capturing most of the headlines. Bloomberg Business Week reported that the Impossible Burger is available in nearly 15,000 restaurants and food service locations nationwide. And Beyond Meat products are sold in over 53,000 restaurants and grocery stores like Giant and Safeway. Several startup companies have ventured into the area of developing meat alternatives. According to the Scientific American, some of the companies investing in lab-grown meat include Mosa Meat, Memphis Meats, Super Meat, and Finless Foods. Tyson, Nestle, Purdue, and Danone are just a few of the companies positioning themselves in the plant-based meat alternative market. Investment firm USB projects growth to increase from $4.6 billion in 2018 to $85 billion in 2030. Investments in meat alternatives are accelerating, but will consumer acceptance be similar? Meat substitutes appear to be attracting consumers because they are promoted as being healthier for humans and the environment. Or at least that's the perception. Mintel Group Ltd. surveyed consumers last year and found a third said they considered a plant-based burger healthier than the animal kind. However, experts say the reality is these products are less healthy than a lot of people think. If you compare a Beyond Burger to a McDonald's Quarter Pounder patty, nutritionally speaking, it's a wash, according to Bonnie Liebman, Director of Nutrition at the Center for Science in the Public Interest. I conducted my own survey online with 100 people responding. My results indicated that 49% would not try a meat alternative, but a sizable group, 37%, said they would. The perceived benefits mentioned were eco-friendliness, animals not being harmed, and that these new products could help feed a growing world population. Many were unsure what the benefits of meat alternatives may be, and one individual said there are far too many benefits of real meat. When asked what their concerns were about meat alternatives, people cited taste, texture, price, and food safety. One respondent summed it up by saying the general unnaturalness of it. This comment was reflected in a major study led by Dr. Jason Lusk at Purdue University, which indicated while there is interest in meat alternatives, people still want the real thing. They surveyed about 1,800 US consumers and found overwhelmingly 72% chose conventionally farm-raised beef over the alternatives. I wanted further insight, and so I personally spoke to Michael Utz of Mydan Marketing, a firm specializing in the marketing of meat and understanding its consumers. Utz told me that lab-grown meat and plant-based alternatives demonstrate innovation in the food industry. However, he told me that beef remains the gold standard in the protein market, and to maintain that success, the industry must do a better job of promoting all that it has to offer. Utz said lab-grown meat and plant-based alternatives will be an alternative protein source that will appeal to some people. The key for beef and other conventional meats is to make sure they don't become the alternative. This insight from Utz leads me to a final question. What impact will meat alternatives have on the conventional meat and livestock industry? Analysts in a Food Dive newsletter said the industry would be wise not to take its eyes off of the competition of meat alternatives. As this trend continues to gain momentum, it has the potential to impact the 5 million people in the United States meat and poultry industry, and ultimately alter the face of conventional farming as we know it today. And I am one of those faces. I'm a fourth-generation farmer. My great-grandparents and my grandparents raised livestock, as does my father today. Continuing that legacy, I own and raise market lambs and Simmental cattle. My curiosity about meat alternatives is personal. I wanted to learn what they are, who would buy them, and most importantly, understand consumer interest regarding the perceived benefits and concerns. As a part of this process, I hoped I could find out what this new kid in town meant to me and my future. A decade ago, meat alternatives seemed to be science fiction or a passing fad. Today, researchers and marketers have translated that science into a reality. What I have discovered in researching this topic is that there's no need for a showdown when there is so much more to learn. The FFA Creed reminds us to secure knowledge and skill to work efficiently and think clearly. And that is exactly what I'm going to do as I pursue my career in meat science. Armed with knowledge and a desire to learn more, I believe the real work for me is just beginning.
Martha, you say currently the nutritional value between meat and alternative meat is a wash. If that is the case, what's the best way to incentivize consumers to choose real meat?
So the reason why people are attracted to alternative meats is because of the way they have been marketed and promoted. People are interested in alternative meats because they're promoted as being healthier, even if that may not be the case. As a beef producer, I'm confident in the products that I am producing to be healthy for consumers to consume. And so that's the most important thing that the beef industry can enhance and do a better job of, is promoting the nutrition of beef products. For instance, beef has 10 essential vitamins and minerals and other nutrients that are good for the body, We need to be promoting information like this further so that people can understand that both products are healthy to consume and support a healthy lifestyle.
Congratulations on making it to the final stage.
Thank you.
My question is if you could please give us the exact ingredients in a regular hamburger, a lab-grown burger, and a plant-based burger.
So within a real burger, the only ingredient is going to be beef, which is one of the advantages that beef has in the future to introduce clean labeling and to show consumers the limited ingredients that are in ground beef. With a lab-grown burger, those are still very much so within the developmental stages. So in terms of ingredients, many of those are unknown at this point. When we go into plant-based burgers, that's when we see much more ingredients being used, and that's because they have to use different things to imitate beef and the flavor and texture as well. But the one thing that they do that works very well for them in terms of a marketing perspective is that they have put all of their ingredients and why they're used on their websites. If you go to Impossible or Beyond Meat, you will clearly be able to see every single ingredient, why it's used, and what it brings forth in that product. And so that's one of the ways that people who usually seem to be afraid of more ingredients, we're seeing a shift, and people are willing to trade off for more ingredients because of the transparency.
Hi, Martha.
Hi.
Besides touting a healthy alternative to real meat, what are companies like Impossible Burger or Beyond Meat really doing to the point where they've found themselves in 53,000 restaurants and grocery stores? What else is happening there besides just touting the perceived we're healthier?
In addition to that, people and society want to take care of the environment. They want to be sustainable and environmentally friendly. We're seeing a huge increase in this in consumers everywhere. And so that's another way that alternative meats have gained traction, is by that promotion that their product is environmentally friendly. Again, if you go on the website, you can clearly see the amount of land that's used, the amount of water that's saved, and the amount of resources that are saved making these products. Another thing that consumers are interested in. But in terms of beef production, we are another sustainable and environmentally friendly industry, and we need to do a better job of promoting that. Often we hear a missourced number of 14.5% for the greenhouse gas emissions of beef production, when in fact it's only 3.9% according to Frank Mitlerner, a UC Davis professor and scientist. And so by promoting our real greenhouse gas emissions and the way that we are promoting and taking care of the land is another way that beef can play a role in this. But because alternative meats have teamed up with not only the health factor, but the environmental factor, it's creating a lot of buzz around their products.
Do you think there's a place in the market for both plant-based products as well as meat?
I absolutely do. I firmly believe as a beef producer that we need to be providing consumers with choice. And I actually had the opportunity to talk to a few industry leaders in Cargill and listen to a podcast with the leader of Tyson, and what they shared is very similar. Their mission is in the agriculture industry, and they want to provide that choice for consumers. So I believe, as an agriculturist, as a beef producer, that we need to work for the demands of what the consumers want. And what a noble and humbling to be able to be a part of an industry where consumers do ask questions about their food. We are so grateful to live in a country with that food source where people can start demanding different things. It truly, if you look at it as a whole, is a blessing.
FDA standards of identity are one of the biggest challenges facing the food industry. For example, is...
Thank you.
Then I'll let you leave. That concludes the National Prepared Public Speaking Event Finals. Congratulations to all of our participants in this finals event. Please join me in showing our appreciation for these speakers, judges, timekeepers, and our committee. The results of this event will be given Friday during the 6th General Session, starting at 7 p.m. at Lucas Oil Stadium. Please don't miss our next event, the Agricultural Issues Forum, at 1:30 p.m. this afternoon, right here in the Nationals Final Hall, and join us again tomorrow for some more leadership development events. Thank you, and have a great day.